What's up, y'all? Hope you're doing well. Hey, I am at a point now where I've been thinking about, how to take what I've learned about leadership over the past, 15 years or so and try to transfer it, try to teach it, try to add something to your tool belt, to your leadership toolbox, if you will. I by no means think I have some sort of corner on the market in terms of leadership, but I do think that from my experience and from what I've seen, I think there is potentially something that you could take away and add it to your leadership. There's a ton of different leadership styles. A lot are effective, but I can only share what I know, share what I've experienced, share what I've seen. But so in efforts to do that, I wanted to, film a two-part video breaking down what I've called the empathy leadership model. I was asked probably 7 years ago by a business consultant, how have you done what you've done at Chick-fil-A? And at that point, I had opened up 12 franchise locations and developed several teams and developed, which I'm most proud of, several amazing leaders. And I think to me, that's the mark of leadership is not what you do, but who you develop. And I had the privilege of seeing some young people come into the Chick-fil-A organization and develop into amazing leaders. And I wouldn't say it's because what I did, but potentially what I unlocked, or maybe what I uncovered, or helped them uncover, or helped them see inside themselves. One of my favorite illustrations of us as humans is we're kind of like a like a bottle, in the sense of we're on the inside and we don't get to see the label on the outside. So if you picture this is like a bottle of Coke and it had the nutrition label on the outside here and the ingredients. This is just water, but just if you can pretend that this had multiple ingredients, the nutrition label would have it right here on the outside. And the idea is, if we're on the inside of this thing, we can't see the label. And that's kind of how it is as humans. We can't see what's on the ingredients label. We don't know exactly what's on the inside. So we need people around us. We need leaders. We need our coworkers. We need mentors. But this leadership model, the empathy leadership model, is really meant to help equip leaders with what I believe is a force multiplier when it comes to leadership. I think empathy is something that can be learned. It's something that can be taught. It's something that's strategic. Oftentimes, empathy gets a bad rap. I believe it is looked at as soft. It's looked at as, something that's kind of, fluffy, or something that is, maybe even some cases people, other leaders will look at it as maybe not even meant for the workplace. Kind of leave your stuff at the door kind of mentality sometimes you can see in the workplace, where leaders often encourage people just to come in and do a job. But what I found is that if we force our employees to just to come in and kind of leave their stuff at the door, there's a huge part of them that we won't be able to leverage or to use. There'll be human capital left on the table, so to speak. So this model, I believe, will help, I think ultimately create a sense of belonging, create a sense of unity amongst the team. But it has to come from the top. Culture is always built from the top down and the inside out. And when I say the top down makes sense for most people, they get that from a hierarchy standpoint, that it has to come from the most senior leader down through the organization. But when I say the inside out, that comes from two places. One, it has to come from the inside out, that we can't try to manufacture something, because what we're ultimately going to get is what's on the inside. We can try to, quote unquote, fake it till we make it, And in some cases that works, but there's always collateral damage. Um, but then in terms of the inside out, so at Chick-fil-A, the office was in the middle kind of the restaurant. And what I what I began to notice was, the culture was really developed and really marked by those conversations in the office. That there was this sense of, man, how we talk about our team, how we talk about our guests, how we talk about the business inside those office doors, behind those closed doors. Those conversations, that was what the real deal heartbeat of the organization was. So this idea behind the empathy leadership model gets at the heart of leadership, I believe, and that if we're going to lead people, we have to be able to connect. So just kind of high level, as we talk about this word empathy, as we most commonly understand it, is the act of kind of putting yourself in someone else's shoes and kind of understanding and trying to understand where they come from. Now, the challenge, and this is a little bit of a disclaimer, is this will help a leader understand where someone else is coming from, but that employee, that team member, or whoever it is that you're leading has to be coachable, has to be teachable, and has to have the want to, has to be open, right? So Patrick Lencioni wrote this book, The Ideal Team Player, where he breaks down these three attributes of a ideal team player, and it's humble, hungry, and smart. So that humility one is really foundational to this thing. So you can be the best leader in the world, but if your team members aren't interested in learning, aren't interested in connecting, aren't interested in growing, then you're going to kind of be stuck. That's kind of where the work is until you get that engagement. So to kick it off, so the empathy leadership model, empathy is an acrostic. So each letter, all 7 letters of the word empathy, stand for something. And coming from the restaurant world, I think there's a affinity towards recipes. So this idea of this model it's a recipe, but it's also, it builds on each other. So it is sequential in the sense that you can get value of starting and executing on, let's say the letter M in the word empathy, but E is really the foundation. So to kick this off, I want to unpack the first 3 letters, and then the second video, I'll unpack the last 4 and kind of wrap it up. So to get this started, and as we know, and I spent some time in the construction world in my first career, and so what I would tell, and most of y'all get this, is that the foundation is critical, right? If you don't have a solid foundation, everything that you build on top of it is going to be shaky. Kind of stands to reason, right? Makes sense. So this first letter is massive. It's extremely important. And E is about being emotionally present through self-leadership. And when I say present, I am talking about in the workplace. So this is referring to kind of like your baseline presence when you're in the workplace. But it's also referring to everything you do leading up to. So emotionally present through self-leadership. That's the letter E. So this idea of being emotionally present. So we are emotional creatures, not in the sense like emotional in the way of like erratic or unstable, but if you just think about emotion kind of meaning energy in motion. I think it was Jack Welch that said that leadership and energy are connected, right? We need energy to lead. So this is kind of, if you want to think about it like energy management. Well, so what do I mean by that? Well, you can't give what you don't have, right? So if you're not filled up, if you're not taking care of yourself, if you're coming up dry if you will, or if you're trying to lead with an empty tank, the team is going to feel that. Right. So, okay. So let me give you some examples of what that will look like. And this is where a lot of my one-on-one coaching starts around this idea of self-leadership. See, most people don't really take enough time for themselves. There's only so many hours in a day, and they think, well, man, there's not enough time. Well, I would dare to say, as a leader, there's always time. You have to make time. Like, that'd be like saying, well, I have to go on this long trip, but I don't have time to stop at the gas station to fill up. Well, you're not going to get to the destination. I think the same way is true in leadership, right? We have to lead ourselves well in order to fill up, so we have something to give. Because it's not, leadership is not just about getting a task done. It's not just a matter of going through a checklist. But really, if we want to lead well and we want to develop people, we have to be filled up so that we can be at a place to where we can give and we can really serve at a high capacity. Because what we'll see here is leadership is all about the other people. Leadership isn't about us. It's all about the other person and about showing up in a way where we're filled up so we can give that away. So, a couple examples what self-leadership might look like. For me, it's looked different in different seasons, and I'd say that's the beauty and that's the fun of it, right? Like that, there is no formula, right? You're 1 in 8 billion plus. There's not another one of you. And as you know, probably at this point in your career, that no two seasons are the same, that things are always evolving, always changing. The needs are always different. Your needs are always different. So part of the joy in this process of self-leadership is figuring out what that looks like, figuring out what that need is. And I think the fun part about this process too is that it actually gives context for our challenges. So sometimes the easiest way, if you're sitting here saying, well, gosh, I don't even know where to start. Well, I'd say, where are you struggling? Where are you coming up short? Where do you need help? That's the first place, and dive into that. See, so many times we want to plow through. We got to get to the next day. We got to get to that metric. We got to get to that quota or that goal. We got to get to that bottom line goal that we have set. And that's all important. We have to get there. We have to get to that destination, 100%. But we also have to make sure our gas tank is filled up so that we'll get there. Because if you're in a leadership position, there's other people depending on you. There's customers depending on you. So, as I mentioned, things change in different seasons. And part of this process is figuring out what it is you need in a given season. So for me, in different seasons, that's look like podcasts. In different seasons, this look like YouTube videos. In different seasons, this look like reading books. In different seasons, this look like pursuing a meeting with mentors. There's a lot of different ways to do this. But I think what I really want to convey in this is all those different means, but also is the fact that you have to take ownership of your self-leadership. And I had a great friend break it down this way, that self-leadership is important, but we also need self-awareness to inform our self-leadership. So again, part of where we find out how to best lead ourselves is by leaning into self-awareness. It's just being aware of where we struggle. What are we good at? What do we want to grow in? What does our team need from us? And use those things to inform our self-leadership. If you're in sales and you're trying to get better at sales, maybe it's a book by Chris Voss. If you're leading and managing teams, maybe it's getting into some of Simon Sinek's work or Patrick Lencioni's work. There's a lot of great content. There's so many great voices. We're not at all in a shortage of information. There's information for days. Maybe it's using Chat GPT and trying to figure out what the next steps look like, or how to figure out what your next moves are. But the most important thing is that you're taking time for you, because here's what I want to say is you're worth it. You're worth the investment. So we naturally invest in things of value. So if you think about, the stock market, which isn't doing great now, you may not want to invest there. Real estate, gold, silver, all kinds of different things that, like, in the physical world, that we invest in things of value. Well, unfortunately, and ironically, a lot of times leaders miss themselves. They miss investing in themselves. And man, what a tragedy, because not only do they suffer, but the people on the other side of their leadership suffer. The customer suffers, the business suffers. So here, this is the first letter, is E, to be emotionally present through self-leadership. And remember that emotion is about energy and motion. It's about building up and getting what we need to give, and not just showing up just to manage the day to day, but going filled up, going up into that place of work, knowing that, man, I'm here to serve and I'm already good. I'm filled up. I got plenty to give. My gas tank is filled. I'm ready to roll. That might, and here's another one. It might look like going to the gym. Might look like, for some of us, man, maybe you need a massage. Maybe you just need to take an afternoon off. There's a lot of different ways, but this is extremely important to leadership. And again, you can't give what you don't have. So I just want to encourage you in that you're worth the investment. That's one investment that you will always get a return on, is an investment in yourself. So invest in yourself. That is the foundation of this. You cannot step into empathy if you do not have your tank filled up. Or if you already are an empath and you're empathetic, if you're not leading yourself, we all know that endless empathy is a disaster, right? So there has to be healthy boundaries. There has to be this sense of where you end and someone else begins, right? So I'm not going to get into all of that, but the first letter is about self-leadership and being emotionally present. The second letter, and I'll roll through these a little quicker, but the second letter is about being mentally present and keeping your fingers on the pulse of the organization. So mentally present. So emotionally present, mentally present, right? So mentally present, what does that mean? What I mean by being mentally present is after we've shown up and we're emotionally present, we're locked in, we're filled up, we're good to go, we're ready to roll, is to notice the details. Notice the details. And this is where we start to get in kind of what this idea around empathy and putting ourselves in someone else's shoes. So whether it looks like noticing some of the micro expressions, and you might be saying, well, gosh, this is going to take more time. 100%. This is going to take more time. This is going to take time away from managing checklists. It's going to take time away from maybe, sending another email. But here's what I tell you is, where there is human capital left on the table, there's financial capital left on the table. So this isn't about just making more money, but it's about maximizing people and about investing in people and doing that the right way, so that as we grow, we're growing in a healthy way. Because we all probably have seen organizations where they've outgrown their people, or the people have outgrown the organization, and it's never a good thing. It never works out well for either. Because we know retention has a lot to do with the bottom line, and it's very, very expensive to hire, to train, to go after new employees. And I'll just put a little side note in here. There's this myth that somehow we're going to hire the perfect employee. Well, there's no such thing. There's no such thing as the perfect employee. Employees are trained, they're built, right? And that happens through belief, through great leadership, through great training programs, through great one-on-one coaching. There's no such thing as a perfect employee. We can hire great people that have similar core values and have alignment around the core values of the organization, but But I don't think we can ever fall prey to the myth that there's going to be such thing as a perfect team member that never has to be invested in, that never has to have any type of coaching. That's just going to show up day one and just be like a robot and just get it all done. It's not going to happen. Um, it just isn't. And here's the other factor in this is as we show up and we're mentally present and we take care of our people and we notice the details, right? This is about having our finger on the pulse of the organization, right? Being alert and aware, noticing the details with people, and being intentional about the conversations that we have. You know, there's no shortage of challenges in people's lives. There's no shortages of challenges and trials that people go through. So what I want to encourage you in is that you have the ability as a leader to make a difference in someone's life, bigger than you probably could even imagine. Bigger than you could imagine. So I just want to paint a picture of a young man, and for lack of using real names, I'll just call him John. So John was a team member that worked for me. Great young man, fantastic kid. Well, notice that, you know, just in his work, his body language just seemed like he was struggling with something, you know. And at that moment, and this is where this empathy part comes in, is, you know, we could just drive for results, and sometimes we have to do that, and sometimes it is about getting the job done. But man, when we get good at taking and seeing the details and understanding what people might need, or that there may be a need that needs to be addressed, and we can have a conversation, sometimes a 15-minute conversation, a 10-minute conversation, even a 5-minute conversation can make all the difference in the world in somebody's life. So what I didn't know is, you know, John was living with his grandmom, and his grandmom wasn't doing too well. You know, she was having some health complications, and he was carrying that. He's feeling worried. He was feeling stressed about that, and it was showing up in his work. So during his lunch break, you know, John and I caught up. I you know, sat in the booth with him. We had a conversation, and man, did anything change? Was I able to heal his grandma? No, I didn't do anything per se. But what happened in that 5-minute conversation was that John felt cared for. He felt like, man, this isn't just about, you know, making more chicken sandwiches or boxing more nuggets. This is about people journeying through life together, and I feel cared for. And what I would say is the rest of that shift looked dramatically different than the first half of that shift. Did anything change in his life? No, but his perspective changed. He felt cared for. So that's just one example of how we can drastically impact our team members and our employees' lives just from the act of caring and noticing the details. And there's a balance to all this, guys. There's a balance to all this, and how we execute this. And I'm not saying, you know, be the organizational therapist, but what I believe is if we can kind of bolt on this force multiplier, this exponential growth factor in our leadership of empathy, we can level up our leadership to levels and heights that we would have never imagined, just because what's going to happen is we're going to start unlocking people. We're going to start helping people move past the things that hold them back, because what I've come to find is that when we can create relationship, and when we can create connection, it's unimaginable what we can do together as a team when we're fighting together. But as one author said, that mushrooms grow in the dark. So this idea that you know, those things we don't speak to, that those things we say to keep at the door, that's usually where the quicksand happens, right? That's usually where we kind of can get hung up in our life. Okay, so E, we have being emotionally present through self-leadership. M, we're talking about being mentally present keeping our fingers on the pulse of the organization, noticing the details, stepping into those conversations, having great conversations with people, caring about them. If somebody has a surgery, hey, a couple of days later, hey, how'd that surgery go? How did your mom's surgery go? How did your sister's surgery go? When you can find a way to remember those little details and to show that you really genuinely care about someone, it's gonna be a game changer for you. Okay, and then the last one for today is P. And this one means to plan with the end in mind and then go back. Okay, what do I mean by then go back? I know we've probably all heard before, plan with the end in mind, but then go back. So here's one, I think, fatal flaw that a lot of leaders run into is they spend a ton of time planning. Right, as a leader, we're responsible for the vision, the direction of the organization, and it's a privilege, right? It's a privilege that we have all the time that we need to plan and to create vision. But not everybody has that privilege. Not everybody has that time. So as the team is working to execute that vision, this is vitally important that we meet them where they are. We have to meet them where they are. Again, this idea of empathy, of putting yourselves in their shoes. But these are tactical ways of how we can show up. We can lead ourselves, right? We can be aware when we show up. And in our planning, this is part of the day-to-day, we're gonna plan, but we have to go back to meet them where we are. And this could look like developing training programs, developing ways to unpack that vision, and taking more than enough time to make sure they understand it and realize, you know what, I have spent endless amounts of time. I've spent my career leading up to this point. I can't place unrealistic expectations on my people, or people will get crushed under the weight of my expectation. So if we're trying to move in a direction and we don't see the team following, or we're not getting the result that we want, the question isn't what's wrong with them. The question is, what do I need to do differently? What do I need to do better? How can I improve the vision, the mission, in terms of the clarity in which it's being relayed and communicated down through the organization? So this, I'll give you a visual. So if you ever have seen a tractor or trailer kind of hitch up and work together, before it takes a long trip, you have, say this big yard of these trailers. Well, when the tractor is ready to connect to one, it backs up and it connects, and then it goes forward and they go together, right? So without sounding too basic, this is no different with people. But how many times do we see leaders absolutely frustrated, out of their mind, around the result, around the lack of people following, the lack of people getting done what they're trying to get done? And the problem, more times than not, is they haven't connected. So what does this look like? What does this mean to connect? Well, it means those first two letters, E and M, for sure. But this part, more tactically speaking, in terms of the planning with the end in mind, is knowing exactly where we're trying to get to. See, oftentimes as leaders, we know where we want to get to, but have we actually crystallized it? Has it actually been written down? Is it crystal clear so that we can take, and at any point, if anybody asks to sit down with them and have a conversation and communicate that to them and help them buy in to what we're trying to do? So we have to connect. So to plan with the end in mind and then go back. So in the breakdown, I have this little acronym next to it where it says A-B-A. So we go from point A to point B. We talk about that, right? Where are we going? Okay, we're at point A. We're trying to go to point B, but we also have to go back to point A because we get to be in our mind first as a leader. right? We know what B looks like. We understand the destination. We understand where we're trying to go. But we have to go back. We have to connect. We have to go back to A, to where we actually are today, and meet them there, and then help move the team forward, move the organization forward. Again, whether it be through training programs, whether it be through coaching, whether it be through meetings, town halls, whatever it is, but we can't lose sight of those things. We can't just expect people to get there, because remember, we understand it, we see it, we know where we're trying to go. They don't. They're just showing up trying to do their best. They're trying to have an impact and do a great job. Nobody gets up in the morning and says, "Hey, I'm going to go to work today and have an awful day. I'm going to go to work today and screw up this organization." Nobody does that. Nobody does that. Remember, we as leaders, we're the ones that hired them. We're the ones that brought them onto the team. So if we're going to take responsibility and seek and hire them, we have to take responsibility for getting them on board and getting them from A to B with us, and equipping them to help get us from A to B. All right, so that's the first three letters of the empathy leadership model: E, M, and P. I hope that's making sense. I hope you're taking something from it. Remember, this is just to add a another piece to your leadership toolbox that you can use as you lead people and as you seek to make a difference in the organization and drive results. So I'll see you on the next one. Talk soon. See you.